Hey, everybody, welcome to our weekly Data Talk, a show where we talk with data science leaders from around the world. Super excited to talk with Joe Lanzini today. We're going to be talking about how data science is being used across different industries, and especially some of the data science challenges faced by non-tech companies. And Joe Lanzini is the Chief Science Officer and Director at Go Data Driven. He formerly served as an advisor at KPMG. He earned his master's and doctoral degrees in theoretical physics, and super excited to have Joe part of today's show. Joe, how's it going, man?
It's very good, Michael. Thank you for having me.
So can you tell us a little bit about your background? I'm always fascinated when talking with different data scientists about how they got to where they are today. And you have just a fantastic academic background. I would love to hear kind of the work you did earlier on in your career, and then what led you into data science.
Sure. So I started out with physics, and after high school, and I kind of got in love with the whole theoretical, mathematical side of it. So 12 years ago, when I moved to the Netherlands, I started a master in theoretical physics. And I said, well, this is really what I want to do, like my whole life. It's great.
Yeah.
And after
That's
that,
awesome. That is so cool that you figured that out so early in life.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it actually didn't turn out as I wanted when I was 22. So I did a master there, and as you said, then I kept going with a PhD in theoretical physics, studying the mechanical properties of DNA. Once you twist and stretch it. And after 4 years, it was great. And you published all these papers. But on the family side, I had 2 kids back then. And I started becoming much more pragmatic and practical and maybe impatient a bit. People with kids that will probably understand. And to do a postdoc, I had to move abroad, and I said, well, I don't really want to uproot the family, and I want like time scales that are shorter than 1 year, which is basically how much you work on a single paper on a research project during the PhD.
Oh wow, so, that's
a
long time.
Yeah, that's a long time. So I published 4 or 5 articles in 4 years of PhD, which is
wow.
It's a long time. I wanted more action, so to say. So I looked at the industry around me, and as you said, KPMG was one company that was looking for bright people to come work for them. And there I had my transition from academia to business was it was like I didn't know what to expect, and so when I was so bad at it, but once I interviewed there, it was for the software quality group, and they're saying, well, you have to assess the code quality of application written by programmers, and I was like, that's okay. I have no idea how to do it, and I said, no, don't worry. And coming from academia, I said, well, maybe in 3 years I will learn how to do this properly. And maybe I will do my first project alone in a couple of years. And it was all really excited.
Yeah.
And then, of course, after 2 weeks that you work there, you are alone in a project. and you kind of have to basically to learn swimming. And so there I moved. So that was my move outside of academia. And after a while, so I was always handy with computers, and probably we all grew up with some crappy Windows machine that was always broken. So I was like a tinkerer, and people started to figure it out. And once and Hadoop back then was starting to be a thing, and KPMG was very early at least in the Netherlands with this whole Hadoop and data and analytics movement. And they asked me to basically to write a guide for a tech partner to install Hadoop with Kerberos on top of it. So for people familiar with Kerberos, it's like the most hard part about Hadoop, and so I closed myself in a corner for, I don't know, 2-3 days, and I figured out how to do it. I was super proud of it.
Wow.
And the data and analytics team said, well, actually we could use you more often. So I started doing a couple of projects there. And after a while, I got a recruiter from the UK actually got in contact with me saying there was this small startup, Go Data Driven, that actually started in a couple of months before, that was searching for consultants in the data and analytics space in Amsterdam. So basically, I made the move 5.5 years ago, after just 1 year at KPMG. So that's how I got there.
I loved how you were sharing just your thought process as you were leaving academia, looking to start a career and not quite sure where you're going to land, but obviously got a great role working at KPMG. And then you're like, I'm just going to figure this out. And then all of a sudden you're thrown into a project where you're by yourself and you're just basically, like you described it, kind of thrown in the deep end and got to figure out how to swim. How did you, because I'm thinking about all the people listening in that are in school right now. Maybe they're graduating soon. They're thinking about jumping into the workforce, and there's a hesitation there. There's fear there. What would be your advice for them?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because I think I also felt that fear. And before doing the jump, I think a lot of the fear or the uncertainty came from thinking, I think industry will have the same standards as academia. So academia, like especially when you're doing a PhD, but also a master, like a research project, you have such a narrow scope. So you become very quickly in, like, the top 001 in the world in that with that topic. And so you'll think about, well, I'm going to industry and I'll do like software quality, or I do data science, and these are the same standards that I'll have to adhere to when I got there, when you get there. And of course, when you make the switch, like from theoretical physics to software quality or to data science, you say, well, but I'm not an expert there. And you think, and the immediate reaction is, well, I need a couple of years just to get started, because that's how much time it takes out of, I mean, when you start in university to become good at what you do. I mean, to become a good physicist, I needed years to get there. But it turns out, luckily, that in the industry, there's this bubble, quote unquote, of precision is not there. So you can get started and add real value to the companies you're working for much more quickly than in academia. So people starting to think about making the jump, it actually looks much worse than what it actually is. I mean, for me, the real, after a while that I was there, the thing that was harder was actually because people, relations, business goals, they matter much more. And you don't have that perspective. At least I didn't have, doing theoretical physics. I didn't have that perspective while in academia. So I was coming from one of the probably most remote discipline of the spectrum, like from people skills. So it was very challenging, but in the end, it was very rewarding in the sense that you acquire a lot of skills, like these interpersonal skills, which are also super useful, like not just in your career, but also like to become an adult, in my opinion.
Yeah, no doubt. You described your kind of one of your first big projects was developing this guide around Hadoop. Can you talk about that process? Because here you are, fresh doctoral degree, theoretical physics, obviously amazing with maths and sciences, computer programming, and you're given something brand new, something you never looked at before. What was kind of your thought process on how you began to tackle that?
Yeah, so I have to say, there was a starting point. There were the resources that you could find in Cloudera and Hortonworks websites. They were the first two large companies that were vendoring Hadoop. So that was my start point, like by Googling, like, well, the first thing you do is you Google for it, and then you start finding these guys. But I mean, it was true with Hadoop, and it's even truer now with all the new tools in data science that you have now. That a lot of these guides, they're outdated. So you start there and you start to stumble upon things. So my process is very simple. You start to Stack Overflow it. You look into forums, and then at a certain point, you start looking at the source code. Like, what is the script doing? So why am I getting this error? So like you dive deeper and deeper, and then you find things you don't understand, and you start to Stack Overflowing these other things. You fix them, and then you go a step forward. So step by step, it's a very step by step approach with like layer of complexity that you're peeling out of the problem. And I also have to say that after a while, and it probably happens to more people, but after a while, like, it starts clicking. You get so much immersed into the topic that it starts clicking together, and from there it goes like downhill on the complexity side. It's much easier.
Yeah, and I love that you just stuck with it. I like how you said at one point you just got into a room and just focused in on that particular project. I'm going to learn this. I'm going to get this achieved, which shows grit, determination, which is like super important in any field, but especially with data science. And it's funny, I was thinking about how with my own kids, and you mentioned you have little ones. How are you kind of instilling grit in your kids? Because I know with my kids, sometimes, you're teaching them something and they just want to give up. It's very easy to want to give up. I'm thinking about just a couple weeks ago, I was working with my son on tying his shoes, and he was getting very frustrated. And I was like, you can't give up. Yeah, you know what I mean? So I'm kind of curious, like, obviously, for someone like you, extremely gritty, going through graduate school, getting your doctoral degree, working so hard, and then jumping into a very gritty field where you have to constantly be learning, constantly challenging yourself. How are you instilling that into your kids?
Yeah, so I thought a lot about it because I was thinking about myself, like, how did I get that skill?
Yeah,
like, these sort of skills. And I was thinking about when I was a child, like some 10 years ago, and there were these like point and click adventures like Monkey Island and Indiana Jones and the Day of the Tentacles, where you had like this like days long puzzle, and they were extremely frustrating because you had these items which were seemingly unrelated, and you had to put them together. And step by step, you would solve this like immense puzzle. And I think that really trained me to look about this problem in a different way. So this playing and learning, I think, was very fundamental to me. So I'm also trying to do that with my kids, and like doing Legos together or like construction set. And I also downloaded a couple of these classical games and play them together with the older kids. And it's really nice to see how the game is teaching them that there's a reward at the end. Like, you're not doing it for nothing, but there's a reward. Like, there's fun at the end. There's something intangible. But it's actually tangible for a child, because I like that, and my children are liking it. And I guess many more children like this sort of riddles or puzzles.
Yeah, no doubt. I think it's so cool. I like the fact that you like very introspective, like looking back, like, how did I become gritty, and how can I then also train kids in the next generation to be gritty too, and sticking with things. Tell me about your jump, leaving consulting, leaving KPMG, to go over to a startup, because that can seem scary. Leaving a very great job, great big company, global, and then taking a jump into a startup. What was that like for you?
Yes, it was very well. I think it was very serendipitous at the time, in the sense that it was still like the economic situation, at least in the Netherlands, was still a little bit depressed. So they were giving like year contracts to everyone. And as I told you, I already had 2 kids at the time, and my year was coming to an end, and I had a very good year, but they were not signing this new contract. And while I was waiting, Good Driven approached me, and after a while, they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And once I got the offer, I also got the new contract for KPMG. And then I said, well, this corporate like behemoth that was KPMG didn't look at me like as a person, but they probably looked at me as a number. While this small startup saw the person in me, I said, well, I want to work there. I want to work for these people that valued me more than like just number. So I made a switch, like, of course, with a bit of risk associated with it. You go from the cozy corporate headquarters of a multinational to the small startup, and we were at the time we were so cash strapped. We were so cash strapped that we were basically crushing the office space of a large banks there. So we'll help you out build a team if you give us like 2 desks and 4 chairs, and we call it even. So it was a really great time, and I'm still there, so I'm not. I have no remorse for that choice.
That's cool, and I love that you talk about when you were, deciding on which company to continue with or work with. You talked about the startup was, you felt more. It was more personal. Like they knew who you were. You weren't going to be just a number. And I think that's really important for somebody who's just leaving school, getting their first job. They're trying to find, the right company to work for, but also like who they're working for, the manager that they're going to be working under. Do you have any advice for those, and what to look for in a leader, and someone that you're going to be working for?
Yes, I think what I personally am very happy about my leaders at Good Driven is the fact that they were willing to bend the rules to make the people with them happy. And it might seem like stupid or childish, but it is actually very important in the sense that we are in a market where that is very competitive for young talent, for intelligent people, and if you don't bring yourself to be flexible for them, to be flexible to the needs of the people that work for you, then it's going to be very tough to find someone that wants to work for you. And so I think that at the end, they're really caring for the person before the revenue, before other things. It's really important. And finding this, of course, there are a lot of qualities that good leaders have, that they also are very honest with you, that they care about your development. But like caring at the human level, it's so important. And me, as I think a lot of people in my position, like senior data scientists or advanced data scientists, we're getting offers basically every other week, like people, a recruiter calling or emailing. And I think you can stand out when you have like a personal voice. You don't have these people that play the volume game, emailing you or calling you, but like somebody that looked you out, that knows who you are, that makes a connection. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think those are great points. I'm really happy to hear about your company culture, and even the way that you talk about this just shows the way that you lead. really focusing on the people and showing that you care. I think that's crucial for having an efficient and good working team. What when you went over to join Go Data Driven, and now kind of heading up data science there, can you talk a little bit about the work you're doing now and how you're helping companies?
Yeah, so now I'm having kind of a dual role, like with the director of the academy. So basically, what I'm doing is that I'm helping companies designing learning journeys, and I will explain in a bit what that means. And I'm also acting as a chief science officer, so basically helping clients really with the data science projects, leading team, creating teams, creating data products. So I'm kind of having this dual role. And when it comes to the academy and these learning journeys, I really believe that we have a lot of learning materials out there, like we're like explosion of resources to learn to be a better data scientist or to learn something about a particular topic. And there are a lot of companies offering that. But I really think that to make the most out of your learnings, they really need to be paired with the work that you do in your day-to-day job. So basically, I'm designing this journey where we have some classroom training, we have some coaching, like one-on-one coaching and peer group coaching, and also where all the trainees are embedded into teams where they have seniors and where they are continuously working on data science use case. So I'm like designing these journeys for both for data scientists, for data engineers, but also for the role of the business or analytics translators, like this role between the teams, technical teams and the business. And I'm really also focusing on training content that is applicable in your daily job tomorrow. So I like that the students leave our training and they say, well, I actually learned things that I can start applying immediately. So, which is very different from what I was used to in academia, because you learn just in case, like math, you learn just in case. Well, we really try to giving a lot of just in time training to the people that come to our classes. So we assume that they had already a background in stats, math, physics, econometrics, computer science, and that they now want to get the learning which empowers them to be effective tomorrow.
Joe, what for the people that are attending these classes, what are generally like their titles? What kind of roles do they play in their companies?
Oh, that's a good question. So it's very well. What happens is that I think at least in the Netherlands, since 3 or 4 years, data science got really to the hype level. So a lot of people that were business analysts, data analysts, they just like stripped the business title and they wrote data scientists in there. And many of them found themselves like, well, what am I gonna do now? Like it's not like my old job. I need to learn new tricks. I need to be active and to do different things. So we got a lot of those people coming. We also definitely have a lot of people just like right after university, and they just start with a new company, and this company is offering them these learning journeys. So we have a lot of these like junior data scientists, data analysts, and on the engineering side, we have a lot of software engineers, data engineers as well, that they want to learn more about technologies like Spark or Apache Airflow, that are also coming in. And on the business translator, so on the soft side of data science, if you could say that, we had a lot of product owners, team leads, coaches, so more on the on a less technical side of the spectrum.
When and by the way, how long are these classes?
So they range from 1 to 3 days for a small classes, but we also have some programs that we develop with our clients, and that they are like 26 days spread over a year. So basically, every 2 weeks you get together and you have either like a theoretical and exercise day or a hands-on hackathon day. So they vary really a lot, and they're for different audiences. So each audience has its own flavor.
That's awesome. And I love this idea of the learning journey because all of us are on this journey together. And I love the fact that you're helping to lead this. What do you guys have planned for the future? You're doing lots of classes now. Where's this headed?
What do you mean?
Oh, I mean, like, so you're developing these classes. I'm curious about, what are like the different class names you have right now?
Oh, sure. So the longest one is the Data Science Accelerator Program, which is like the 26 days for, basically to really be a full-fledged data scientist. Then we have the same for engineering, so for data engineers. And then we have classes such as like data science with Spark or with Python or R. And we also have a lot of classes about a particular topics like the deep learning or time series or natural language processing, of recommendations and A/B engines and A/B testing. So it's really, really varied.
That's cool. So people can go to Data Driven and learn more about those classes.
Yeah, go to driven.com, and there's a training. Basically, there's a training menu, because we have like the training. We have the training part. We have the core tech part, and we have the more business part to help companies become data driven with a transformation that touches more than just technology. And so we try to be to offer this implementing the strategy with this business part. The tech part tries to build data products, and the academy is to train basically the people working there.
It's very cool. I'm curious for the people that are just getting into data science and they're learning their first language. There's a lot of debate on, should I learn R? Should I learn Python? Do you have any perspective on that?
Well, I have a preference.
Yeah.
And so what we see the most is that at least around us, Python is starting to win, and I think a lot has to do with the fact that it's better supported for frameworks like Spark or Apache Beam or Apache Flink on one side. On the other side, that it's more supported by frameworks like TensorFlow and Keras for deep learning. They all have these Python interfaces, or they're written partially in Python. And the third part is that it was born as general purpose programming languages. So when people want to start and put things into production, Python offers more tools to do so. While languages like R, they clearly have a different background. So you can shoehorn everything into a programming language, even into SQL. But when it comes to my preference and the preference of the industry around us in the Netherlands, Python is the clear winner. We also conducted recently basically a data survey of professionals in the industry with more than some 1,500 respondents, and we clearly saw that Python is taking the lead here.
Oh wow, very cool. It's awesome to hear what's happening in the Netherlands, and I think also when I've seen stats out here, I'm also seeing there's a huge increase in adoption for Python as well. So very cool to hear about all the work you're doing. I had no idea about these learning journeys, these classes that you're involved in teaching. I think that's wonderful. And now let's talk about the other part of your job, which is around the consulting and helping companies with their data.
Yeah. So while we were preparing for the podcast, I thought a lot. What is it that makes maybe us different from the rest of the industries? And I thought a lot about how we want to how we want to enable these companies which are non-tech, that do not have a tech focus, to be more effective with data science. And I think that there are a lot of example of companies that could really benefit from applying data science in their day-to-day operations, and we're trying to really enhance them and to help them in that journey. And one example that I really like, it's about the Dutch railways. Basically, it's a very traditional company with a very traditional way of working, and the people working there. But of course, that they have huge amounts of data. Like all the trains in the Netherlands are like sending, I think, around thousands of measurements every second. So really a lot per train. So it's really a lot of data.
Wow.
And they were storing a lot of it. And all the analysis that they were doing on this data was basically happening with dumps of the data that the technician would go to the train at the end of the day, would put literally a USB stick or a laptop, and he would attach to the train. He would download the data, and then he would mail samples of this data to basically to the train engineers. And once we got in there, the question was very clear. Like, we have this very cool model. One example is the air leakage model. So basically, these trains have compressors that they use to operate the brake system. And sometimes these compressors they break down. And it's a fail-safe system. So when they break down, the brakes basically they clamp on the train, and the train stops in the middle of nowhere. And so they had developed this very cool model to detect when this was going to happen. However, the time that was needed to get all the data from the trains and to manually transport it and to analyze it and to give back the results, the train would break in the meantime. So they have this predictive maintenance model, but they couldn't use it. Basically, they couldn't use it into production because there was no data pipeline, there was no automatic ETL, there was no automatic modeling running there. So we came in, and we basically said, well, look, we can help you. You can do it. You can do it in a better way. You can serve your customers. You can serve your customers better. So what we did, we built the whole pipelining of the ETL of data coming out of the train, so that people could access data 5 minutes after that the train sent it. And we started running this model instead of every 2 weeks, every 10 minutes. So every 10 minutes, we analyze all the data that was stored in one of the cloud providers. We would start like this Spark model, and every 5 minutes they would get results. Like, is some compressor going to break down in the next 2 weeks? And this data would go directly into basically the iPads of the technician, so that every evening they would be able to look at these trains where the leakage was happening. So this is one example where it's really cool to basically see that this data science, this whole and this whole infrastructure that was built around it, like the cloud infrastructure, the engineering, really help in a meaningful way people around us, and also me myself, as I use the train a lot.
Yeah.
And which is very different than what a lot of people have in mind when they think about data scientists. That they think, well, these are the guy optimizing the ads that I'm seeing on my browser. But it is like far from the truth. There are a lot of cases where we're actually doing it very differently.
I love that. That is so practical. And the fact that you're riding the trains all the time, you're like thinking, I know a little bit about the data being passed on That's I can't believe how much data is being sent.
Yeah, it's really a lot. Like gigantic amount of data, and of course it's all very optimized, because for each sensor they're just sending a 0 or a 1 most of the time, but it's still really a lot of data.
I think that's so cool. How you help to basically prevent trains from breaking down with data science.
Yeah. Yeah, and, you could say we did it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Um, so when we were emailing back and forth, you had mentioned that one of the topics you like talking about is some of the data science challenges that non-tech companies have. And I was wondering if maybe you can share one or two examples of non-tech companies and some of the data science challenges that they're facing.
Yeah, so I think if I would group them, the first one is to attract good talent. As we said before, there is like a fierce competition, and the traditional companies, they do not even have an idea on how to get the good people in the space. In the sense that if I look at the HR departments, and they see like a job, I was talking with like the one of the largest retailers here in the Netherlands, and they said that they had these vacancies, and it's a very prestigious company here.
Mm.
They had these vacancies for senior data scientists, like for months open, and they just couldn't fill them. And I think because they have a lot of prestige, like on the population level, but like data scientists and engineers, they want this challenging environment. And if you cannot provide them, if you cannot provide a good team, it's like a chicken and egg problem. If you don't have a good team there of good people that want to work, that are already working for you, getting new people is very hard. So we really see a lot of people like struggling to get teams off the ground. And so that's also why I think like the training is very important for all these companies here. Like the training part, it's like fundamental. And the second one, I would say, it's the data sharing. If I look at a company like Uber, just to make an example,
Mm-hmm.
everyone there is basically able to query all the data that Uber has. Of course, like financial data and private data is not there, but like the rest of the data, like the operational data, people can just go there and query it. So from the junior to a manager to a product owner, you just can log into the computer, go to their internal system, and they can start query the data, answer the question that they have with the data, make new strategies, and think about new products, all in a very data-driven fashion. While traditional companies, they work with this kind of silo of data, and each department has its own data, and they have these databases that don't talk to each other, and it's very hard. It's very hard to share this data. So the whole, I think the curiosity and the innovation is kind of slowed down by this. By this, and the third one, I think all these traditional companies, they are still working mostly without analytics. So they had to answer the fundamental question: what is analytics going to add to me? Like a lot of old school managers that say, well, my division is already profitable, and why should I invest in this that I don't understand? And a lot of times there's a lot of bad vibe around it. We get a lot, especially with I think the privacy scandals we're seeing lately with this whole data, which is not handled carefully, or algorithms that are doing maybe unethical things, and there's really like there could be like a bad repercussion for what people think about this whole data science business. So I think these are the biggest, one of the biggest hurdles for non-tech companies.
Yeah, those are huge, and I think those are excellent examples. I'm thinking about the second one you mentioned around the silos that exist, because I think that's huge. There's all this data that's being captured, but it's not easily available to people within the organization because everything is siloed. Every department is almost like its own business, and they're protective of their data as they should be. But there is a huge benefit when the company is able to break through those silos to let the company be more efficient by sharing data to maybe help their customers better if they just knew what the different departments were doing with the data and what was available to them. Well, what advice would you have for those companies that are struggling? They're in that place where they're very siloed. They don't even know all the data that they have because different business lines are not sharing it.
Strong leadership that says, well, we're going to do it and that's it. And we're going to invest whatever it takes to centralize all the data. It's very difficult to start. So starting with a very clear business case, with the low hanging fruits, basically things that with low effort, help the company a lot. It's the way to go to starting being more data driven. As an example, I worked at a financial firm as well, in the trading floor, and their sales department, they had this huge list of clients and the products that they were selling to them. And I was there and had the idea, well, why don't we build recommendation systems for your clients? Like if, I don't know, I'm just saying, if Apple, so I have an Apple computer, Apple is buying a financial product A and B, there's no reason we couldn't look into the data and start seeing that companies similar to Apple are also buying C while they're buying A and B. And such a recommendation engine, it's really, really simple nowadays. There are libraries where you just have the data, you feed it into the library and it gives you results. So it's probably 1-2 days of data science work, but it's immediately actionable. Like all the account managers can start calling their own company and say, well, why are you not buying C from us? Who is selling a C to you? Right? Because we really think you need it. And it seems very stupid, because you have an account manager and you think they know the companies they have, but it's a very different mindset in the sense for them, they know that Apple always bought A and B from them and they're fine with it. They maybe want to sell more A and B, but they're not even thinking about C because Apple never bought C from them. So starting from this, simple things, add value, it's very, very important.
Another great example. Also, your first point around attracting the right people, and this gets into earlier in the conversation where we talked about what attracted you to go data driven, the culture, the people that you're working for. And I like how you put it, the chicken and egg problem. How do you attract the right people if you don't already have a really good culture? And so with that in mind, what advice do you have for data scientists that are looking for new jobs as they are interviewing? Maybe some signs that this is not the company I want to work for, maybe some warning signs that this company might not be the best fit for me?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So if I think about a situation around me, I always look for two things to spot interesting companies: the open source work they're doing. So how much of the work are they contributing back to open source, and their activity in the community, and also how many, well, maybe papers is more for R&D departments, but how many blogs are they putting out there explaining what they're doing? How open are they to the world? And I think the companies that understand this, that have this openness to the world, either through software with open source, or through knowledge, with blog, or people speaking at conferences, or meetups, or organizing meetups, or sponsoring meetups. I think this openness is something that is really important, because it really, why should a company be open? And I think the companies that are open are the ones that are confident that the people working there really put a lot of importance in this openness. And I think now it's unthinkable. It's unthinkable to be a successful data-driven companies without this open mindset. And I think we can see it, for example, also in a company like Apple. I don't want to talk about Apple too much, but they recently hired one of the senior machine learning executives from Google. I think it was director of research. Name is like slipping me, but basically, of course, they hired a great executive and a great figure. But I think what they did more was to send a signal like we're being more open with the machine learning work we're doing here. Like it's not like you come work for us at Apple and nobody will ever know what you did or like the breakthrough stuff that you introduced. But we want to be more open. We're allowing you to speak at conferences and write papers about the work that you do at Apple, something that was not even a thing like 5 years ago. But now they're seeing that Google and Facebook and Microsoft they're kind of leapfrogging, or they're way ahead in terms of artificial intelligence, and they say, well, how do we fix it? Openness it's a first step towards fixing it. And of course, I think smaller companies, they can also do that, in the sense that I don't expect any non-tech companies with a data science or data engineering team, I don't expect them not to do interesting stuff, to even write a blog post about it or to open source one of the libraries. It's also something very, very small things. I expect them to all good companies to have these characteristics. And of course, also read Hacker News, and we hear every day about the scandals that happens with the on the HR level in a lot of these tech giants. So also be aware for that. But this openness is also very important, in my opinion.
That's some really great advice. Last question is around data scientists that are I see in our Facebook group, a lot of people are asking, like, getting that first job is really, really hard. And I'm curious about your hiring process, Joe, when you are interviewing young data scientists or people that are just breaking in. What are some key things you're looking for before you say, yes, I want to bring that person in?
Yeah, so we're looking like for two profiles when it comes to data science. One is more code heavy, and the other one is more business heavy. And for both, we expect like a strong understanding of machine learning and why it's different from physics, econometrics, and so on. We also expect some good level of coding proficiency for both. But then for the code heavy profile, we're really looking for a getting things done mentality, like just getting in this room and figuring out, as I did 6 years ago, how to install a dupe with Kerberos, and this hacker-like state of mind. We're also looking for the ability to explain difficult concept clearly. Like as more and more state-of-the-art algorithms becomes usable, it's very important to explain why should we use this. I mean, what's the benefit of this added complexity? And then from the code-heavy data scientists, we also we want them to be able to participate in building production-ready AI solutions. So we had a lot of people coming in and that they're good with the data sets as long as it's on their laptop, or a good writing, like coding a dashboard, where when it comes to participating in something that needs to add value and runs into production and runs to scale, that it kind of falls short. So I think these are really important differentiator, especially as data science matures, and especially like also the smaller companies move away from the proof of concept phase. And the business heavy profile, we want them to basically be able to, also communicate clearly, bring the business with you, do the stakeholder management, and being able to drive change in this sense that I talked about before, and also be able to dissect business case so that they're able to pinpoint the value every time a prediction is correct, and also being able to pinpoint the loss that the company is incurring every time the prediction is wrong. And I think this is yeah, this is very important. And the third, well, maybe the third characteristic, which we ask everyone to have, is to be pragmatic. And I always talk about the Netflix challenge, where 10 years ago Netflix put up a 1 million prize for an algorithm that would increase their accuracy by 10%. And the two teams won. But of course, the algorithm was never implemented because it was too slow on Netflix scale. So that means that even though the algorithm was 10% better, which is like really a lot, they just couldn't use it. So I always say, think about this every time you're doing something. Is it adding value to the company, or does it have the power to add value to the company, or is it just a better number for your satisfaction?
I love that. That's really, really good. That's excellent advice. I think that applies to anybody who's working in business about the numbers you're reporting. Is it just a vanity metric, make you look good, or is it actually adding value to your business? I think those are great questions to be asking. Joe, before we leave, how can people get in contact with you? How can they learn more about the classes, trainings that your company offers, or also companies that are interested in working with your team?
So you can find me on Twitter at gglanzani, and the company site is godatadriven.com, and there we have the links to the blog and to the training portal, and basically like the team. We showcase a bit who we are, and I actually write quite a lot on our blog, like blog.godatadriven.com. And I also have a website, lanzani.nl. I can send the links afterwards. But basically, Twitter is where I'm most active, together with LinkedIn.
Okay, awesome. And what I'll do is we have a special blog post dedicated to today's chat. For those listening to the podcast, the short URL is just ex.pn/datatalk71. Again, that's ex.pn/datatalk71. And on that blog page, I'm going to link out to Joe's Twitter account, LinkedIn profile, so you can connect with him, his blog, as well as links to his company website, so you can learn more about everything that Joe is doing, and also make sure to follow him on his social profiles. So definitely check it out. And also, if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, I'll put those links in the comment section so you can easily access them. Joe, thank you so much for your time. It was fascinating learning about your background, all the work you're doing to help up-and-coming data scientists, and also, of course, the work you're doing to help businesses gain control of their data and make sense of it to drive their business forward. So thank you so much for your time today and sharing with our community.
Thank you, Joe, thank you, Michael, for having me. I had to make an error in the podcast.
No, this is great. This is so much fun chatting with you. And I'm so glad that we were able to connect on LinkedIn. And hopefully in the near future, we can chat again.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
Thanks, everyone, for listening.